There we go. Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of We Are Atheists. Today we're joined by a very special guest. Our special guest today is Damien Blackmoor. He's the co-chapter head of the Satanist Temple of Indiana. Before we get to the interview, I'm going to go ahead and go through the pleasantries here. WAA, We Are Atheists, is a live call-in show that allows theists the opportunity to call in and have a dialogue with atheists and, in today's case, Satanists about beliefs, politics, morality, you name it. My name is Caleb Titten, and as I'd already mentioned, this is Damien Blackmoor. We Are Atheists is brought to you in part by volunteers from Free Thought Fort Wayne Incorporated and by the public access of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And for more information on Free Thought Fort Wayne or We Are Atheists, you can find us on Facebook. We Are Atheists, or excuse me, just look into the search engine and for We Are Atheists TV. Look for this symbol, and you'll find us there. By the way, do you guys have, yes, you do.
Yes, we're on everything. We've got a website, the SatanicTempleIndiana.com. We're on Facebook. We have Twitter, Instagram. I believe both of those are at TST_Indiana. I'm sure I'll get a message if that's incorrect. And we've got a Facebook page you can follow. We post a lot of kind of what we've been doing. And we have a chapter forum that people can join if they're curious to get involved.
Okay. Well, I forgot to mention, we do have an email address that you can email your questions to as well. weareatheiststv@gmail.com. Today we're operating with the skeleton crew today. I'll go ahead and admit that. So we're going to attempt a phone call or two, but if it doesn't work out, we'll end up just not taking phone calls and just continue with our interview. So if you are interested in talking to either myself about atheism, humanism, theism, or whatever, or Damien about the same things and Satanism, please feel free to give us a call. Toll free to, well, it's not toll free. I don't know why I said that. 260-422-3902. We do not have an 800 number. So let's just go ahead and get this ball rolling. How are you doing, Damien?
Pretty good. You?
I've been extremely excited about this interview.
So have I.
The past 2 weeks now. The audience wanted this, but I ended up bumping into you at the Pride Fest at Headwaters Park. I believe it was August or something.
It was the end of July, I want to say.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact date, but end of July, July 28th, I want to say, actually, yeah.
Yeah, sometime during that point. And I had never in my entire life bumped into a Satanist, at least not an out-and-out Satanist. Maybe I have, I just didn't know it. So as soon as I had heard there was a Satanist booth there, I had to hop on over and see what they were all about. And one of the first things that I noticed, I picked up one of their pamphlets and I was just going through their list. You know, it's kind of like a memorandum, you know, what is Satanism? Here's what we represent, philosophy of sorts. And I was just going down their checklist and I was just like, humanist. These are all things I agree with. Like and we'll get to this in a little bit, but that made me ask to myself, what's the difference between a Satanist and myself? Because as far as I could tell, the label, I mean, everything that was on that list applied to me. So who knows? Maybe I'm a Satanist and don't even know it. Is that a possibility?
That is totally a possibility, yeah.
Because I've said before, many a time, that there are a lot of humanists out there that don't know they're humanists.
Right.
A lot of them. Same thing goes with atheism as well. There's a lot of atheists that don't know they're atheists. Agnostics, talking to you. So let's go ahead and begin by talking about where you come from, your upbringing. How were you raised? Were you indoctrinated in any particular religion? Were you raised secular, somewhere in between?
Well, for me personally, I grew up very Christian. Like, we went from Foursquare Vineyard, kind of the more charismatic church, to like complete opposite and going like full-on Baptist, like suits, hymns, bashing everyone who didn't think King James Bible was like the legit Bible. So that's kind of more where I came from, and as opposed to a lot of different people, even just in our chapter organization that I talked to, I loved it. Like, I was all into it, all on board, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, you know, when I was like 5 years old, I started doubting. And I'm like, no, I didn't really have that. I didn't have a reason to doubt it, I guess I should say. My family was always pretty open about everything. So if I had questions or whatever, I mean, ultimately they always deferred to like, well, the Bible says, and you know, exactly that. But I had no
on live TV. Oh, good. I wasn't on camera. Hide it. No. What are you doing?
At least I wasn't the first screw up, so it's good.
I'm sorry, man.
No,
I
it's cool. So like I just never had a reason to doubt it, and then just generally as I got more curious and just interested in different things, or different things that I wasn't really able to pursue so much, like Satanism has always been an interest of mine ever since back when I can remember.
Well, I want to pause you there real quick.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, anything that even had a skull and crossbone, even, or just a skull, anything that looked like it could be construed as Satanist was banned. It was outlawed. It was not welcome in our home. Was that even remotely the case with you?
Oh, for sure. I'm actually very shocked that anything like Lord of the Rings was even allowed, because Harry Potter was the devil, Dungeons and Dragons was the devil, literally like everything was the devil, just like in that Adam Sandler movie, everything was the devil. And I mean, that didn't really stop me from being curious about it, and I think that curiosity stemmed from, why is this so bad and no one's going to talk about it? Because everyone always talked about, oh, like rock and roll is the devil's music and you play Stairway Backwards and, you know, all that shit. And I was always curious, like, why is this bad? Like, what is it actually? And no one wanted to talk about that.
Right? Like, I remember, okay, the typical satanic panic one, Stairway to Heaven, for example, that wasn't allowed. Married with Children, Dungeons and Dragons, The Simpsons. These are all things that I wasn't allowed to participate in or view or to look at even.
Right.
But I promise you, I looked at them. The more and more you tell a 13-year-old boy that he's not allowed to do this, he's going to go on to the same with an 8-year-old or if anybody.
Really,
I mean, really, you're just going to make them more and more curious. And I will admit that although they were really strict, my parents, I mean, were relatively strict as far as what I was allowed to consume and not consume. I also had a slight quote-unquote advantage that they pretty much just left me be, by and large. I'll say that has its advantages and disadvantages. I'll leave it at that. But by and large, yeah, they kind of left me in my own devices. I was very independent growing up. So yeah, I went and checked those things out. I remember looking at The Simpsons, for example, and thinking, I couldn't think of a reason why I wasn't allowed to watch this. Like, sure, some of it was a bit raunchy, but I honestly thought Ren and Stimpy was worse than The Simpsons.
Yeah, for sure.
They had no problem with that. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. So, okay, so you just mentioned that the Satanist propaganda and Satanist imagery and things like that weren't allowed.
Yeah, and it was always, like I said, of interest to me. And I recall one story specifically. I was talking to just someone in our church, and I forgot how it came up, but he mentioned the Necronomicon, which I don't know if you're familiar with the Cthulhu mythos or H.P. Lovecraft's writing, but the Necronomicon's just a fictional book that exists in his literary world. And this guy was going off on how the Necronomicon is another name for the Satanic Bible. And I'm like 12 years old thinking like, no, the Satanic Bible is the name of the Satanic Bible. I'm fairly certain of this. And I went to one of the deacons and I was like, hey, this guy's saying this and I don't know if that's true. Can you like point me in the right direction? And I'll never forget, he was just like, I don't know too much about that and I think you shouldn't look any further.
What's that?
And it was just very like, don't pursue this anymore. And that, I mean, for a long time I didn't look further into it, but that always stuck with me that like, shouldn't you know what this is? Especially if Satanism and Christianity are supposed to be like the two opposing factors of the world, you know, Satan's the big bad guy and God's the big good guy. Shouldn't you know what the other is, at least be somewhat familiar with it? And that always struck me as very odd. So of course, growing up, after I moved out and everything, I was like, I'm actually going to, you know, look into this and see what this actually is. And it turns out absolutely nothing like anyone was saying.
Right, right. I didn't really delve too much into Satanism until well into my quote-unquote atheist career. I'm not gonna lie, it's not something that's ever really piqued my interest. It's just the way I was brought up. I'm sure I'm not entirely. I can't tell you why. It's just never really pinged my radar. But
no, it's certainly not for everyone. It's not something that like everyone's gonna be like, you know what, I like blah 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 about it. And
well, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I look at like Anton LaVey, and I don't want to be like that guy. I don't want to appear like I'm like that guy. At the very least, for all I know, I want to be exactly like him and just talk and look a little different. But that was the face of Satanism for me. It was Anton LaVey and the big breaking stories. And it was I think it was in Kentucky, wasn't it, where the Beelzemuth statue went up next to the Ten Commandments, and then somebody ran over the Ten Commandments statue.
No, what you're thinking of is in Oklahoma, there was a Ten Commandments monument, and the Satanic Temple was trying to put a Baphomet monument there. Yeah.
Okay.
And they were trying to like get placed there, and
Beelzemuth. That's from Queen. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, cool. Any Queen reference. And so this guy went driving into the Ten Commandments monument, because Baphomet hadn't even been placed. Like, it was just getting made, and we were trying to make that be a thing. This guy drove into the Ten Commandments monument, demolishes it, and everyone tried to be like, oh, see, like the Satanists, they broke this monument and everything. Turns out the guy on his own Facebook page, full-on Christian, like he's like in-your-face Jesus. And so that was a nice little turn of events. And then that happened again in Arkansas, and Jason Rapit's a big fan. And he has a Ten Commandments monument on Capitol grounds, and that same guy that drove into the monument in Oklahoma drove into that monument and destroyed it.
The same guy?
Same guy.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, same guy went and did that. I'm not sure, but I think there was some sort of repercussion for him after the second time.
I mean, he drove across state borders just to go and run over that.
And he felt called by God to do this because the Ten Commandments monument is a graven image. And that was his argument, which is actually kind of an interesting way to look at it, that it's a graven image, and the Ten Commandments say, do not make this. and there they are standing with that engraved. And
I never thought of that.
So we wanted to get Baphomet Monument up in Arkansas as well. And one of the big things with that is we want it to be no religious monuments or free for everyone. So a lot of things with the Satanic Temple are about religious pluralism and equal representation for all religions. So
that's one thing that I love about the Satanists. Okay, before I continue, is it more accurate to say the Satanist movement or the Satanist philosophy? I mean, how would you phrase, if I want to talk about Satanism as a whole? Just say Satanists and assume that everyone's on the same page?
There are a little bit of different factions. If you just blanket term Satanists, all the LaVey people are going to be all pissed off. But like, we view ourselves as Satanists and label ourselves as Satanists. They don't really have a trademark on that. So just however you feel comfortable like talking about it, like Satanist movement is all right. Satanist philosophy.
Well, for the purposes of this conversation, just say the movement. So the one thing that I love about the Satanist movement in particular is they really highlight and open eyes, especially for theists and people who don't get to see the world from the other side. The repercussions of their actions. I mean, most of those people who were absolutely opposed to having Baphomet on next to the Ten Commandments on the town, what was it, the City Hall or something, whatever it was, and those people were just opposed to it because it was Satanists. I mean, they didn't understand that, well, hold on, I have mine, they have theirs, but mine's special. Wait, what? Like they don't understand that they're favored. I don't know why I'm at a loss for words right now.
No,
this is a terrible.
Most of the people that we've seen that are against it, that are theists, because not every theist is against it. We've had some Christian people who are like, you know what, we respect what you guys are doing. We don't agree 100%, but more power to you. You guys are doing the right thing. A lot of the pushback from people is they think that freedom of religion is freedom of my religion.
Yes, thank you.
And that's kind of how, I mean, the whole country kind of exists in this, like, well, Christianity is the definition of religion, so if you have anything religious, like, it's because you're going to put a cross up or, you know, 10 Commandments or whatever.
I remember Matt Dillahunty told a story on the Atheist Experience a couple years back. It wasn't about Satanists, but it was along these lines. He had said that he knew somebody that had participated in enforced school prayer for his whole life, and he did the same with his child. He took his child to a school where they had school prayer, and they all would huddle together and do these around certain times of the day and whatnot. And then his child was in sports or something competitive, so they were on an away team, and they were asked to participate in their prayer process. But it wasn't a Christian prayer. It was actually, it was some exotic, I think it was like some Indian or like island nation sort of religious ceremony. Like I'm thinking like Moana-esque, if I'm making any sense.
No, I get where you're coming
these
from.
sorts of religions, I can't remember exactly what it was. It doesn't matter, but the point is this guy was horrified that his child was participating in this prayer and that this was something that they were trying to enforce, and it awakened him. He's like, wait a minute, I don't want to have my child to have to do this. Maybe other people don't want their children to have to do it for my religion either.
Right.
You know? Boom! This huge awakening moment for him, and then he completely, I guess he shifted his political agendas, at least on that front, in a complete 180, just after realizing that, oh, hold on, and not everybody's my religion, so if we're going to enforce this, this is what it's going to be. Everybody's going to get to have their own prayer sessions that everybody's going to have to participate in. So that's just, like you were said in the beginning, you either allow it for everybody or nobody.
And kind of with what you're saying, and I know this example probably gets thrown around a lot, but if it was, you know, Muslims trying to enforce, like, you know, their prayer in school, all the Christians would be up in arms because, you know, the jihads and everything is, you know, coming, and they're going to destroy Christianity and whatnot.
You don't even have to get that intense. I'll bet you it could be as subtle as just a symbol.
Oh, for sure.
Any one of those symbols, or the Jewish star, for example. I mean, if you walked into, well, I don't want to name schools, but any one of the local Christian schools around here, and you decided to put up a poster of the Jewish star, the big blue, it's pretty, it's beautiful, it's nice. But without context, if you just put it there, they'll complain. I can practically guarantee that. So anyway, so we're about 15, 20 minutes into this, so let's go ahead and skip to exactly what is Satanism. Now, I want to talk specifically about what it is and what it isn't. Now, let's keep it simple to begin. Is Satanism a religion?
Yes.
It is a religion.
Yes.
So, that said, what constitutes Satanism as a religion?
All right, so basically, we feel that religion does not have to be exclusively theistic. There are plenty of atheistic religions out there.
So to reiterate, you're an atheistic religion.
Yes.
Okay.
We do not believe in a personal Satan as much as we get messages from random people that are like, can you help me contact the devil? And I'm like, you know, I wish, but no.
Yes, which reminds me, right here, this is one of the most common questions that atheists get, especially in the forums and online and things, which it's very difficult to tell if these people are trolling or not, but it's a common question is, I know you're atheist, but do you believe in the devil? No. I said this last time I was on. No, we do not believe in the devil. And guess what? This Satanist over here also doesn't believe in the devil.
No, we also don't believe in a devil. It's
But okay, I'm sorry.
So we have values, which, like you said, you're going through our pamphlet, which the one I'm thinking of is probably the one that listed our 7 tenets, which are kind of just our values, our core beliefs. Body is inviolable. You know, conform to the best scientific understanding of the world. You know, act with compassion and empathy towards people. You know, all stuff that's mostly what you'd think would be common knowledge kind of stuff. Just like be nice to people and everything, which, you know, like I said, you'd think would be a common knowledge kind of thing.
Well, I mean, that's just, I mean, what I love about that is, I mean, people like to put the Ten Commandments on a pedestal, and as atheists, you know why that's worthless as a moral guide.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, just as a way of life in general, I mean, in the Beatitudes, for example, do you know what the Beatitudes are?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, he's basically saying, you know, have no thought for tomorrow, no thrift, no this, and I give everything up, blah, blah, blah. Just follow me. Essentially what you're saying is do the exact opposite. Do everything that you can to, you know, improve yourself, to improve the lives of everyone around you. Understand the world around you to the best of your ability, and so forth and etc. And I can really understand why you wanted to, just on those grounds alone, why you would want to use the image of Satan, to contrast this. Because this is, from what I can tell, practically the polar opposite, if not exactly the polar opposite.
In a lot of ways, it very much is. And, you know, a lot of people like always bring up like the whole like, oh, well, why would you like use Satan as like a mascot? Because that's really all Satan is to us, is a mascot. It's the symbol of, you know, rebellion against tyranny. And, you know, the seeking knowledge and everything, which, you know, ties very much into that whole like biblical story in Genesis where like the serpent, which was later retconned to be Satan, but the serpent offers Eve knowledge, and in rebellion against the dictator God who's, you know, holding them down kind of thing. But Satan's there to present knowledge and how to better yourself, and you can be like gods kind of thing. That is a lot of the mentality behind a lot of it, is you're seeking knowledge, you're seeking to better yourself, to better other people.
The Satanic 10 Commandments, is this something that you guys, are you, well, I need to take a half a step back here. The Satanist 10 Commandments, that's a LaVey thing, right?
Anton LaVey had the 11 satanic rules, and I think it's like 9 satanic statements. I don't remember 100%. It's been a while since I read his little book. So just to clarify, we don't follow like the Satanic Bible. That's not. Okay. That's something.
A completely different thing altogether.
Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple are pretty different. There's a few differences there. LaVeyan Satanism, Church of Satan is very kind of into the whole like might is right kind of thing, and they believe in like the use of magic to like will magic, like make what you want to happen, and you do these rituals and spells. And
so LaVeyan Satanism is a bit more spiritual.
It's a bit more spiritual in that aspect, and it's more superstitious, where Satanism, as defined by like the Satanic Temple, is very divorced from superstition. We want to, like I said, conform to the best scientific understanding of the world.
Okay.
So
well, I'm glad that we made this distinction. Because,
yeah,
again,
that is a confusing thing with people, because, like you said, you know, the big face of Satanism has always been like LaVey, and I mean, even to this day, where like there's a little bit of, I mean, there's a more prominent difference, but people still get too confused. And I mean, even in our own forums and everything, people will, you know, talk about, oh, well, I follow the 11 satanic rules. And we're like, that's cool. That's not really us, but that's cool. And like, let's talk about what the differences are and like get some knowledge going.
Sure. Okay. So I know that you are a co-chapter head. Obviously, we introduced that in the beginning. You are a co-founder as well. Is that correct? Of your particular?
Yes.
Okay. So what inspired you to do, well, actually, I'm sorry, we already discussed that, but how did you actually end up getting that started? Like, what was the first thing that you did? Did you wake up one day and say, you know what, you and I, we're going to start a Facebook page and let's just see where this takes us? Is that sort of?
No, actually, the story is both more and not as, you know, entertaining as that. Just one day, there's a big, it's still going, a big Facebook forum, just TST in general. And people can like come learn more about it and, you know, just talk about whatever. And I was on there, and I was just kind of like really starting to get into it. And I posted about like, oh, is there anyone in the Northwest Indiana area that, you know, wants to meet up, get some coffee, and just like talk about Satan? And so someone contacted me from the Fort Wayne area and was like, hey, why don't we start a Facebook group and just kind of see where this goes? So we did, and actually I took a break at work and like just got on my phone and made a Facebook group real quick, and made the worst logo you've ever seen.
Know the feeling.
And, yeah, right. And pretty soon we got some people very interested into it. My co-chapter head, Mara Gorgo, she was one of the first people to join the group, and most of our leadership council actually have been there since the very beginning, and we've just kind of slowly grown from there.
Well, I mean, according to your website, the Indiana chapter of the Satanic Temple was founded this year, right? In January in 2018. So you're a very new organization. So, so how do you measure your growth and your viability? I mean, for example, I mean, how are your membership levels? From what I can tell, they've exploded. I'm amazed to have even seen you at Pride Fest, considering you just started this thing in January. You know, so your membership levels, your attendance at events, your fundraising and projects, and pretty much anything that you're able to undertake. How would you gauge your growth in these areas? Because personally, from where I'm sitting, it's impressive.
Yeah, I would think it's actually quite impressive. It's both very slow and very quick to me at the same time. Just thinking, because we started our Facebook group last summer, the end of last summer, and there's a process for becoming an official chapter. So we were just kind of like the Allied Satanists of Indiana, and we did an event in December and petitioned to become a chapter, and so the end of January we became an official chapter. So during that time we've seen a lot of growth. We had a little bit of a system change almost in becoming a chapter. Suddenly we have to do our membership a little bit differently, and just there's certain guidelines that we got to follow. But we've grown quite a bit. We've got our chapter forum, which has over 300 people in it, and that's where we post like all our public events. And you know, we've got, like, when we do Pride, we post that there. We have lunch with Lucifer coming up, and it's a big potluck. Everyone just comes, bring your family.
Where and when?
And we're live. I'm not going to give that information yet.
We can't?
But
Okay.
no, it's actually end of October.
Okay.
And I mean, I just say that because, like, we're trying to keep, like, a little bit down low, because we have a few stalkers that are going to likely show up.
But we haven't had that problem yet. But I can imagine with the face of Satan, you get a lot of trolls.
Oh yeah. There's one guy who's been real, like, every other day, just like posting stuff and then trying to join our forum. And then, yeah, I screenshot all this because it's hilarious. But so over 300 people in our forum, and then we have like a members only group, because sometimes we have events that are just for members, or you know, like the highway cleanups, like for a lot of liability reasons, like we want to have that for just the members.
You know, that brings up, initially, one of the reasons why I asked you here in the first place, at least one of the things that sparked my interest in getting a Satanist here, was because of the quote, I'm going to say controversy, I'm going to put that in air quotes.
Yes.
The controversial adopting of the highway done by the Satanist temple.
Yeah.
Would you mind talking about that for a minute?
Oh, of course. So we weren't really aware of so much controversy until more recent. Like, we knew people were going to be a little bit upset, but generally speaking, everything we've done from Indy Pride and Fort Wayne Pride, and doing the highway cleanup, and we put out press releases and all that, there's a few people who share it with an angry face, and they're like, I'm not driving on this road anymore. And which, I mean, hey, less clutter, right? And so we've had some of that, but overwhelmingly it's been pretty positive. And I've been very shocked, and even just like talking in like our own meetings and stuff, we're like, this is actually going really well. All things considered, like we've gotten a lot of support. Even people who just like don't agree, they're just like, oh, you know, it's cool that you guys are cleaning a road. Like, you guys can, whatever you guys believe in, whatever, but awesome that you're cleaning. And I mean, I view that as a positive, because that's definitely a shift from what I expected. I expected, this is Indiana, we're going to have everyone be like up in arms. They're going to bring their own pitchforks and, you know, be trying to chase us out.
Spray paint it.
Right, exactly.
Have you guys been tagged? I mean,
not to
like
my knowledge yet. We started getting a little bit more negative reaction when the sign actually went up and we posted the picture of it. And then all the news outlets wanted to do video interviews, and we had, I can't remember the news outlet, went out there and interviewed a couple people, and you know, it's the news. They interview someone from every side. One lady was a little bit upset because the sign was placed very close to her property line. Like, when I watched the news coverage, I was like, oh, like, that sucks, and I'm sorry. But then I drove past and I saw where it was, and like I felt a little bit bad that it was right there. Like, I feel good that we have a sign and we're doing something awesome, but
really, you feel apologetic about it. I wasn't expecting that.
Not so much apologetic, just it's attacked. Like, the point of the Inverted Crossroads campaign is to go out and show we're doing good things and we're cleaning the road. It's not to like shove it in someone's face.
So whose idea was this, if you don't mind me asking? Are you allowed to say? Or
I don't know. It was one of those things that just from day one we were like, we're gonna do an Adopt a Highway one day.
Oh.
And
okay.
so I'm not sure who brought it up first. It probably wasn't me. I just am the guy who runs my mouth, like, in our meetings. Like, I'm just like, okay, like, here's the agenda, and here's this, and everyone, like, pops in with an idea, and I'm like, all right, agenda is done. And,
well, I want to thank you guys also, before I forget, because I tend to ramble on and on and on and tangent.
Oh, so
thank you, by the way. Anyone and everybody, any organization, whatever, that's going to adopt a highway to help do that.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. And so thank you for that.
Oh, no.
But on the same topic, I also wanted to ask you, how would you compare and contrast? We're going to sort of switch gears here a little bit. I take that back. This isn't necessarily all that related, but segues. Who needs them?
Right. Exactly.
How would you compare and contrast the goals and philosophy of the Satanic Temple with other atheist organizations like the American Humanist?
I think there's a lot of overlap with them. Like you said, just like the 7 tenets that we have are very like humanist kind of things. So I think like the values very much overlap. I think where there's a big difference is where these organizations are, they're atheistic organizations as we are, but we are also a religious organization. So I think that is probably one of the primary differences.
Well, I think, I know that, well, I shouldn't say I know, I think that humanism has officially been established as a religion.
Has it?
I could be wrong about that, or maybe it was something else, but maybe it was atheism. I don't know. I doubt it. But
I doubt it. I figured atheists would be pretty upset about that.
Right, I would be. I don't want that to be the case. But I mean, there are just certain advantages to being labeled as a religious organization. We're 501(c)(3). But I don't think that's not because we're a religious organization, it's because we're nonprofit. But all religious organizations get their tax exemptions and all those tax benefits just on fiat. They just get it.
Yeah, and you know what's actually interesting is Satanic Temple declined doing that.
Oh, that's admirable.
Just basically because we feel that no religious organization, I should say, should be tax exempt. Like, you should have to pay into it. So there was some thought that, you know, if Trump actually, if the Johnson Amendment actually gets repealed, you know, it'd be a little bit foolish not to take advantage of that. But, I mean, since it's not actually repealed or anything, yeah, we're just not going that way.
All right, well, so we got about 25 minutes or so left, I can see here. So we're going to try to breeze through some of these questions that we fielded before the show. I wanted to ask you, this one here, it says here, it doesn't look like the Satanic Temple shies away from creating controversy. That's kind of a given. So is that really the core approach that you guys use to market your organization? Or, I mean, is that more or less a byproduct of being a Satanist in general?
I think usually it kind of varies. There certainly are chapters that are much more like into the shock value. I think overall it's very much a byproduct. If you go anywhere and you say you're a Satanist, that's going to turn a head, like no matter what. But some chapters thrive a little bit more on that, where others, you know, just the fact that we're turning heads being Satanists is kind of enough.
Right, and you see, we had talked a little bit before the show, and I had mentioned that, you know, it takes a lot just to come out as atheist. Most of my family doesn't even know. Some of them do, some of them don't. I mean, I'm not really even trying to hide it. I'm just waiting for them to figure it out at this point. But to take that extra step, if I were to tell anyone in my family, any member except for my brother maybe, that I was a Satanist, I honestly think that would be the end of that relationship. I don't think that that's a line that I could cross with any of them. Not to crap on you guys, of course, but I just don't think that that would just instantly burn those bridges. It's unfortunate because, like I had mentioned, I do think that I might actually be a Satanist and not know it. That's always a possibility.
Right.
But you know, I'm just saying that takes a lot. So, as you were saying, yeah, I can understand how just the simple act of being a Satanist and just being open about it gives the illusion of controversy. Because it's difficult for me to promote this to like coworkers, for example, this particular interview, because I try to promote as much as I can.
Right.
Because I had to debate with myself whether or not I wanted to say that this was controversial.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And there is certainly a level of controversy to it, or perceived controversy. And I think, you know, going into it, you know that what you're getting into. And we don't really shy away from that. We don't want to be like, oh, I'm a Satanist, but don't hate me. Like, you just understand that comes with the territory, and you just got to, like, own it.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. You know, the same thing basically applies, well, I'm sure as you're well aware, with, you know, with the atheist labels as well. Sometimes you just have to own it, see where it takes you.
Right.
So on these lines, though, as far as, you know, your public perception and your image, what are some of the biggest problems that you see in trying to attract people to your philosophy and your interests? I mean, obviously, it's difficult to get Christians to move towards Satanism, but I mean, say non-Christians, for example. Are most of your membership raised non-Christian or whatever the case might be, or do you find that most of them actually are Christian? That's a secondary question, by the way. Let's bracket that. So,
all right,
let's start with this one first, and we'll go to the other one. What do you think are the biggest problems in trying to attract people to your cause and your organization?
I think there's no shortage of attracting people to it. I think that we've had a lot of people like coming out, and Satanic Temple is very much against proselytizing. We don't want to go out like door knocking or anything. Like people, if they're interested, they will come. And most certainly that is completely accurate. And it's not so much getting people to come as much as you get a lot of people that do not understand it and think you're the Illuminati and they want to join. Like, there's a lot of those emails that we get. So
someone come up to your door in their homemade red robe and their glass of their own urine.
I'm ready, let's go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that happens.
In the back, Damien.
Right.
We're going to that abandoned barn on 37. So, okay, I'm sorry. That was kind of unwarranted. Okay, but, you know, again, I'm also curious. I don't know if you've even fielded your demographic, but would you say, or guess even, that the vast majority of your membership are, they were just raised secular, they were raised theist? I mean, where would you kind of gauge the majority of your membership?
If I had to guess, our official membership, we actually talk about that. We do like a video interview and just kind of get to know like the people that are trying to become members a little bit better. And one of those questions is, you know, what's your religious journey? Like, how did you come to this, and where did you start out? And that's just a question like I have to know from people, because I grew up so, you know, crazy that it's just always an interesting story for me. And some people, they're, you know, like, oh, I never really was into it, or I grew up secular, and, you know, this just speaks to me, and, you know, whatever. And then there's some people who have, you know, they were going to be a deacon, and then they had a falling out, and just you get all around the board. And I think that we've got a pretty good mix of that. There are certainly people that are into it and were into it, and people who just never connected to Christianity or any other religion.
Okay, so I guess we just got an email question of sorts. This question is from Bob. It's more or less a comment. I'm not entirely sure if this is meant or directed towards me or you or both, but I'll just read what it says.
All right.
I'll take it from there. It says, address separation clause in the First Amendment regarding atheism. Now, I am not entirely sure. Do you have any idea what he's getting at there? 'Cause I'm not really
entirely
understanding.
sure. I know that like the Satanic Temple does a lot of work trying to work with like that whole separation of church and state. A lot of like the Ten Commandments monument is very much part of that sort of thing where we want to showcase where the line is actually, because you know, in all reality, separation of church and state, there should be monuments on Capitol grounds at all.
I agree.
And I think ideally, at least from my position, that's the ideal scenario, is that we would just not have religious anything on government property, period. I'm sure there are other people who feel a little bit differently and are like, no, we should have like as much as possible, but you're going to run out of space eventually.
I mean, you know, part of the whole spiel about being an American is, you know, we live in a federal republic, and I do believe in this system where you have 50 states all running all their individual experiments trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. I get that, all right? So if on a state level it came down to, at a maximum, I would accept so long as the constituents are willing to pay for it themselves and not pay for it using church money, because that's tax exempt. If they're willing to actually put their money into a pool, they keep it open book, and they're willing to do the proper steps in order to put up their monument, fine, assuming that the state says it's okay. But by and large, I have a stronger stance on this myself. I personally, we've discussed this. I don't think that the tax exemption for religious status should be a thing, period. I think that if you want to be nonprofit, great. Most churches would probably even still be nonprofit. I can't say that for sure. Nobody can. Nobody really knows. But I have a suspicion that at a minimum, like 3/4 of these churches are going to be perfectly fine. They'd still get their tax exempt status, but that quarter-ish guesstimation of churches that are being skeevy, they go bye-bye. And guess what? That's money that's being taken out of Uncle Sam's pocket, which means that we're losing out on this. That's a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. I mean, the Mormon Church alone pulls in something like I think it's like $30 billion a year.
Yeah, they get a crazy amount.
Yeah, and it's all tax exempt. I mean, you should see some of the amazing temples that.
Oh yes, they've got quite impressive temples.
Dude, I've seen. I went to. I was in Dakota. And I went to one with a buddy of mine at Denver, and he took me in. They had this chandelier, which was like 3 times the size of this table.
Wow.
It was like 8 foot tall, hanging from the cathedral, and they said that they just got that, and he was all proud. Couldn't tell you how much that thing cost, but it probably cost more than my damn house.
Probably.
And I mean, it's amazing to me the amount of money that these people are willing to just give to churches, and without even asking where it's going. And I remember when I was in church, that was one of the things that constantly crossed my mind, probably one of the reasons why I'm an atheist today. But I mean, I was always curious where that money went. Sorry, I got to watch my language on the air. I actually got scolded a bit earlier for having cussed once or twice in the beginning of the show.
I'll have to apologize. I think I used a couple swear words earlier, so.
And I do apologize on both of our behalves. But anyway, I'm sorry. We are actually running out of time here, so I want to kind of get to some of the more nitty-gritty ones here. I want to talk about the future of your organization, if we can kind of work towards that. Yeah, we'll skip to this one here. We're running out of time. So what makes you optimistic about the future of anti-religious groups, if you don't mind that I use that term? Do you think that they're going to continue to grow? Do you think that they'll have an actual impact, a minimal impact? I mean, especially given that it seems that there seems to be a moral shift in this country towards more conservative values. It would appear, at least on the surface, that the Satanist movement has their battles that they're winning, but in the grand scheme, it seems like they might be heading towards defeating the war. I mean, where do you see the future of the Satanic Temple?
So, I think I'm a little bit optimistic about it, just because, there's a real strong, theocrat push right now, but even just in the time that it became evident that Trump was going to, become the president and everything, the membership of Satanic Temple had a jump. People all of a sudden realized, it just clicked. This isn't a joke to these people. This is a legit religion to these people, and I want to be a part of it. It's not just all satire. I mean, we certainly use that as a tool, but it's not all satire. And I think that at some point, and I don't think we'll ever see like the Christianity or Islam or any of those like really dissolve or go away.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about that.
No,
there's no way.
But I think that atheistic religions will be on the rise. And I mean, there are people who claim to be atheistic Jews, and there are like people who identify as Muslim, but they're atheist, and there are even Christians who are like that. And I think that will continue to grow because a lot of the thing that people stick with religion for, I mean, other than like the supernatural aspects, is the sense of community. And I think that if people can divorce themselves from the superstition, supernatural aspects, the community is what will thrive. And so, like, I think that it's very optimistic in the long run. It might take a while to get there, but I think that over time that'll be the end goal or end game.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, yeah. I honestly think that I'm a Satanist and don't know it. I'm serious at this point. I mean, because it sounds like we're on the same page. I've said on pretty much every show that I've ever, well, not every show specifically, I mean like every program that I've ever been involved with, that I at least come off as a bit more anti-theist than generally my co-hosts are. We've decided to tone it down a notch for this show, theists. I just want to let you know. I will promise to play nice. The show is for you guys, the theists out there. The atheists, if you are also watching, this is for you as well, but our primary target audience are theists. We're hoping to get the theists interested in communicating, having a dialogue, so we can discuss what we believe, what they believe, what we don't believe, politics, morality, aliens, whatever. Well, I just want to talk with people who are theists and kind of get to the foundations of our beliefs. That's what this show is really all about. And that said, we're just going to go ahead and move on because we're running real short on time, man. I want to get some of these questions because, mind you, I want to thank Rick and especially, I won't say your last name, but I want to thank Rick for helping to submit a lot of these questions. A lot of these questions were submitted by our membership as well.
Nice.
That were very curious about the Satanism and the Satan movement and whatnot. So, and especially Rick, you know who you are, but I want to thank you especially. So the next question on my list here that we fielded was this one here. With the potential swing to the right in legal decisions by the Trump administration's packing the lower federal courts, and maybe the Supreme Court, with conservative judges, what path can organizations like yours, take to fulfill your stated mission of using activism to achieve a religiously neutral, governmental, and ethical environment?
Let's see. I think overall, just trying to, and I know it's everyone's goal really, is to try to get people to think, and just to think about what's going on, and think about more than just them and their agenda. A lot of like the conservative things. I know people who are very like one-issue voters that are, like abortion is like their hill that they're going to die on.
I hate one-issue voters with a passion. I'm sorry. I know that that's cruel to say, and I shouldn't be singling individuals out. I'm going to single you guys out. If you're a single-issue voter, just stop. Just stop. The world revolves around more than any one issue. I don't care what the issue is. There is no one issue as side point. As a matter of fact, I'm right there with you. I think that, in the grand scheme of things, all we can do is try to enlighten the people. And again, as I just mentioned a little bit ago, that's why I do this. I just want to get to the foundation. Because have you heard of street epistemology before? Or
I can't say that I have.
Okay. Well, one of the things that really thrust me into activism in general was there was a movement that I had discovered called street epistemology. It's steamrolled by Peter Boghossian, who wrote a book called A Manual for Creating Atheists.
Okay.
Now, in that book, he was calling for 10,000 volunteers, which he called the 10,000, to just go out there and utilize what he called the method of street epistemology, which is essentially just walking up to a person, or having them walk up to you, and asking if they wouldn't mind having a 5-minute conversation about a particular belief. It could be anything. And generally, most people tend to pick spiritual or religious beliefs. And the whole concept of this, the whole point, is just to ask questions to get them to question whether or not the foundations of their beliefs are reliable. So one thing that he'll generally do is ask them on the onset, okay, how sure are you that God exists? And several people will start out with 100% certainty.
Right.
And we consider it a win if they go down to 99.9. That's it. That's a win as far as street epistemologists are concerned.
All right.
So it's not necessarily that they're trying to instill doubt in religion. It's the movement itself is more or less specifically to propagate the method of street epistemology, which is useful in every regard in my life that I've ever decided to use it for. Even if you're just bickering back and forth with your wife.
Right.
I mean, just using this sort of approach. It's, for those who don't know, they utilize what's called the Socratic method, which is a way of approaching conversation where you just ask questions, but you need to ask particular types of questions that are supposed to be grounded in the paradigm of whatever it is that you're talking about. If that makes sense. Sorry if that goes above anybody's head. We're going to have more and more episodes on epistemology and that sort of language later. We're about 7 minutes from the end of the show right now, though, so I don't want to continue with that. I just wanted to say that it's these sorts of movements of enlightenment that really got me involved in this process in the beginning, and that's what I'm personally extremely passionate about. So hear you say that's and to see it in your memorandum even. I mean, that's awesome. So we have just one more question here, one more submitted question.
All right.
Okay, last but not least, do you think that the idea of associating with Satan will continue to be a part of your organization's image? Or do you see a day where that will no longer need to be the case? And I'll also add a little caveat to that as well for myself. If, for example, let's say that your answer was yes, that maybe we won't need Satan as our spokesperson anymore. Let's say that's because Christianity dwindled down to nothing. Would you possibly just switch to a different image? I mean, I'm just kind of curious about.
No, that's an interesting question. I don't know that we've ever really given that a whole bunch of thought. At least I haven't.
Well, it's purely hypothetical. We just got done saying Christianity's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not. But it's a very hypothetical question. But I think, in general, that I don't think that the Satan image, the Satan character, I don't think we would change that, because the reason for the Satan character, it would still matter, probably. I mean, if Christianity were to go down, I'm sure something else would take its place, and that same rebellion against tyranny, rebellion against arbitrary authority, would still be relevant.
Okay, well that's fair. I mean, because, and I'm going to be honest, I've heard this said by other atheist activists as well, but our goal is to make our jobs obsolete. That said, since you're also considered a religion, and amongst other things, it's a philosophy, it's a place to congregate, get with like-minded people, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that if you guys, quote, won the battle, let's say religion was sequestered to obscurity, do you think you'd still be a Satanist? Do you think that there would be a need for Satanists?
A joke. Like, I feel like, and I'm not going to try to piss off the Pastafarians, but I feel like if religion were to kind of become like a wayside kind of a thing, then things like the Pastafarians, like that wouldn't really have anything where, and I confess I don't know too much about them, so maybe they actually congregate and do pasta-related stuff.
Oh, yeah, Pastafarianism? That's an actual legitimate... Yeah, by the way, Theists, in case you're interested, we've got a couple minutes to wrap up. I just want to mention this because, again, we try not to assume that our audience knows what we're talking about. Pastafarianism is, in fact, a very real religion. And it's a mock religion, to be fair. Everybody that's in the religion knows it's a mock religion. They, quote, worship the flying spaghetti monster, hence Pastafarianism, and they have the best memes. They have hilarious. The best memes ever. I think my favorite one was something like, I'm not even going to get into it because I don't want to offend anybody. Again, this is a show for you theists, and I'm going to try my best not to offend you guys.
But, yeah, I think that with that being like a mock religion, like the setup of it is kind of to be complete satire of, theistic religions, whereas the Satanic Temple and Satanism, it's not structured that same way. There is certain aspects of that. Like I said, we use satire as a great tool, but it's also entirely different, identifying with the character of Satan and having our own values and everything. I would very much still be a Satanist, even if everyone was like, "What the hell is a Satan?" Like,
that's
somewhat pun intended.
Well, we've only got at most 3 or 4 minutes. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, about 2 or 3 minutes. So I wanted to give you the last word. If there's anything that you wanted to bring up, to discuss, anything you wanted to promote, but be careful, choose your words wisely, because we can't actually tell people what to do. We can give them the information, and they can do with that as they will.
No, I would, if anyone's interested in learning more, check out thesatanictemple.com, our website, thesatanictempleindiana.com. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we're on pretty much all social media, and check out a lot of anything that Lucian Greaves has put out. He's the actual spokesperson for the national organization, and he can articulate things in amazing ways, much better than I can. And so just anything like people are curious about, it's like satanic panic sort of stuff. Like he very much specializes in that, and like how Satanism came kind of from that, and working to expose satanic panic, pseudoscience.
Yeah. Well, okay. Is that,
I think that's everything.
Well, in the last minute, I guess I'd just like to go ahead and promote another atheist humanist activist as well. He just brought up the satanic panic. Most atheists are aware of this guy. His name is Seth Andrews. He hosts a podcast called The Thinking Atheist. And just to reiterate, he is not the Thinking Atheist. That is the name of his podcast. But he delves into that. One thing, he put together an excellent seminar where he specifically goes over the satanic panic and just how ridiculous it was. And he also talks in that same one, I wish I could think of the name of the seminar. Just look up Seth Andrews on YouTube and satanic panic. He'll also discuss how the Christians in this country historically have completely stolen from all sorts of enterprises and establishments, organizations, you name it, everything from Coca-Cola to movies to toys to other books. The Hunger Games, for example, they completely plagiarize and make it their own, and somehow they get away with it. So I just wanted to put that out there as a last-minute food for thought for you guys. I always try to promote fellow atheist activists, humanist activists, and do you have any? Let's try that. Do you have any YouTube Satanist channels that you'd like to promote?
Oh. I can't think of any. I mean, Satanic Temple has a YouTube channel. If there is one medium that would be awesome for people to check out, and podcast. It's actually a podcast I'm going to mention. Black Mass Appeal. They're based out in California, Northern California, and their podcast. It's very accessible. They explain everything really well. It's a very great. They have episodes that are like Satanism 101. Just kind of get you into that, and they're just a really amazing podcast I'd recommend.
And that was Black Mass Appeal?
Black Mass Appeal, yeah.
All right. Well, guys, on that note, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank you, Damien, especially for being on today's show. I'd like to thank any and everybody that helped us with questions for the show. I want to thank you guys behind the booth, and I want to thank all of you guys for watching. As usual, we are atheists, even the Satanist. True story. And we'll catch you next time.